Well, joining us tonight is Congressman Devin Nunes, ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, member of the House Ways and Means Committee, and hero of the Spygate tragedy and scandal. Congressman, it is always good to see you. We're starting to get a sense that there are a lot of Obama holdovers in the Trump administration, and many of them facilitated the creation of this scandal and the frustration of this president, his policies and administration agenda at almost every turn. How big a part do you believe they have played in this scandal?
Well, what you're really talking about, Lou, is you're talking about the greater deep state. And from me, my definition of the deep state is all the layers of bureaucracy in the greater Washington, D.C. area that are mostly leftists, mostly children of the left, products of the left, and totally know who their bosses and overlords really are. And that exists all throughout every agency. It's not just the intelligence agencies. It's at the Department of Defense. It's at the Department of Agriculture. But I think that probably the most concerning part is that because Trump had never been in politics before, and I'm not trying to make excuses. It's not an excuse, but he didn't come to Washington, D.C. with a whole apparatus behind him, a whole pyramid of people who had lived their careers in Washington, D.C. So when he arrived, I think the president thought saw the good in people and thought, well, if we have a National Security Council with 400, 500 people, these must all be patriots. These must be people on the front lines that are warriors. They're in the military. And I think the president just believed those people are all good. And what happened is that the deep state was left. A lot of Obama holdovers were left in there that essentially worked very, very hard to take down the president of the United States. And I think we only know a fraction of what they were doing inside the White House grounds at the very beginning of the Trump administration.
I think you're exactly right. And what we already know is astounding, appalling, and disgusting. But when we attach to the deep state its masters, who appear to be radical Dems, whether they're Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Barack Obama, perhaps the former Vice President Joe Biden as well, and then go through each of the committees. Adam Schiff in Intelligence, the committee in which you are ranking member. I mean, the list goes on. And these are loyal opposition, members of a loyal opposition party, the likes of which we've never seen, hell-bent on subverting a president, overthrowing a president. And I think most Americans now, as we listen to the Attorney General talking about investigating the investigators, whether it's the special counsel, the FBI, the House Intelligence Committee, Judiciary, there is a question now after the Attorney General says that there is no intention to charge a former president who at this moment appears to be, it's not unrealistic to expect, based on the evidence we have, that he had foreknowledge, or that Joe Biden, who we know was going after a Ukrainian prosecutor, and because it's on videotape. We have a huge case filled with unknowns, uncertainty, and a Justice Department now led by an Attorney General who's ruling out prosecuting the people who might be the very head of what has turned out to be a criminal organization and relationship between the radical Dems and the deep state.
Well, let me say this. So I think we have to be very careful. I know how frustrating it is because Obama and Biden surely knew about this. OK, they knew about it. They were well briefed on it. But let's look at the evidence. We have to go off of evidence and then what we can actually bring charges on. And we've covered what my criminal referrals have been. Many of your people, folks know about it, so we won't go back into that. But I think we have to be, we should not jump to any conclusions, because I think that both Durham and the U.S. Attorney out of Connecticut and the U.S. Attorney out of Missouri, as they begin to pull this apart and look at, what happened in early 2016, what happened during the Trump transition, and then I think also important, what happened during the time that the Mueller witch hunt was stood up, and everything that happened from the Flynn indictment and so on and so forth with the report. All those things have to be looked at. And what we don't need right now is any politicization, so to speak, of this. And I don't want the Attorney General, just like I've done. You've never heard me come out and say, well, I made criminal referrals on this person, this person, this person, this person. You've never heard me do that. You've never heard me say that. And that's because every American should be treated fairly. We made our criminal referrals. We did our whole investigation. I suspect that now the U.S. Attorney out of Connecticut is looking at those among other criminal referrals that have been made by the U.S. Senate. And I think we should expect fairness from everybody involved in this.
Well, I think so too. I know that we've had great fairness from the Obama administration that's unleashed this criminal act against a president one way or another. You know that for a fact, and as do I and millions of Americans. We also know that no one wanted to jump to any conclusions as they pursued this president, accusing him of colluding with the Russian government for 3 damn years. I do understand your search here for fairness. I'm glad you respect my frustration as well. Congressman, could we ask you to? I'm sorry, Congressman, we got a hard out. Could I ask you to stay with us through the commercial break, and we'll be right back with Congressman Devin Nunes. We're back with Congressman Devin Nunes. And Congressman, I want to get to the point that we began on, and that is the statements of the Attorney General. At a time when we were watching General Flynn, he has now been shown to be a man who was trampled by the Department of Justice and the FBI, and with the full knowledge of the Oval Office. And, it's a hard thing for any American to stomach that is not going to be fully and aggressively prosecuted by the Attorney General and the Department of Justice. Frankly, it's sickening to me. Your point.
Well, I just remember a lot of people didn't pay attention to the appointment of the U.S. Attorney out of Missouri, who really got to the bottom of all this and presented it before the court. What we have here is we have a question within the judicial branch of government, which is something that we have not seen in this country. Now, this has been appealed been sent to the appellate court by Flynn's lawyers. A 3-judge panel has been put together. They've asked for this Judge Sullivan to present why he thinks he could do this and shouldn't dismiss the case or allow the case to be dismissed, because no one's prosecuting General Flynn anymore. That's the amazing part about all of this. So, when I just think people shouldn't, when you hear the Attorney General or myself not get in the business of naming names, it's because we're conducting serious investigations here. Okay? And, in order for there to be serious investigations, one of the key things you don't want to have happen is you don't want to be seen as targeting anyone, because the evidence is going to speak for itself. Either there is a 302 from the original Flynn ambush in the White House, or there is not. If there is, there's going to be holy hell to pay if that 302 exists, because the communication that goes on after that 302 is produced and obviously being changed and new ones being generated, being briefed to the U.S. Congress, which we put into our report. This is all important evidence to hold these people accountable.
I understand. I also understand that the Attorney General, as you talk about the 302s, has decided that Christopher Wray is a terrific FBI director. We also now, given the documents that have been released, we know that Christopher Wray has been stonewalling everyone and refusing to bring forward evidence and honor the public's right to know. This is not a man who has spent a lot of his time as director of the FBI trying to reform a corrupt organization. We're now 5 months from the election, and you and I and most Americans know clearly the Democrats, with their nonsense and the deep state in complicity, stole the 2018 midterm elections with their nonsense with special counsels and persistent FBI investigations. They named names. They went after this president and destroyed the Republican Party at the polls as a result. It was theft, plain and simple, and as the president said in his 2016 campaign, crooked as hell. I added the as hell.
I think what Lou, you hit something important, and that is that they used the special counsel. They used the Russia hoax investigation, not only in 2016 when they tried to use it for a dirty trick, they used it to try to oust the president and to raise money and to defeat Republicans in 2018. I can't agree with you anymore. And I'll just say that, I have defendusa.com where my podcast is, and I talked this week to Tom Rooney, and he talks about just how corrupt it was down in the basement when we were conducting those interviews and the leaks that were going out to the mainstream media during that time period. And that URL again, Congressman? It's defendusa.com. You can get my podcast there. And this week we interview former
We'll promote
Congressman
it.
Tom.
Thanks, Congressman.